Welcome to the Grip Strip Podcast, episode 57. X marks the spot for all the winners that have X at the back of their first name. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host, my good buddy, Josh Fine. What's good, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Phil. We had a great weekend of racing, I think across most of the series. But we had, like you said, everybody with the last letter of their name X winning the races. We had Alex Palou winning, Alex Bowman winning, Max Verstappen winning, and definitely IndyCar is now back, and it's definitely time to bring back the action, just like your buddy Leigh Diffey likes to say. So definitely a great weekend of racing here.
Yeah, we definitely had a great race at Baba, and they had at least 5 references to the danger zone, and because you need to have the IndyCar drinking game. They have anytime they mention danger zone, uh, anytime Leigh Diffey pronounces certain words, anytime he says Graham Rahall's name, just in general, because he never says it the same way. Like, we're gonna have to make certain games for this so we can get more people to listen. I think that would be a good one. It's like, oh, what's the drinking game for this week? Definitely for the Indy 500. We're definitely gonna have to do that for the Indy 500 because they're gonna allow that fat tub of shit Paul Tracy on that broadcast. So probably going to say something really effed up. Well, the good thing is Miss Hummer won't be on that broadcast because she somehow or another got hired to be. So uh, that's kind of the same thing. Going to Formula One, which was basically straightforward. Max Verstappen, both races, because they ended up stopping and restarting because of a major accident, and which we'll get into. He led both of them. Hamilton made a rare mistake and still came back to finish second. Valtteri Bottas and George Russell, the guy who is driving the Mercedes and the guy who probably will be driving the Mercedes, as much as Toto Wolff wants to talk crap about him. We'll talk about that and how the midfield was affected with some of the stuff that went on and the weather conditions that took place, the treacherous weather on Sunday. Then with the Cup Series at Richmond, Alex Bowman stealing the win from Denny Hamlin and Pizza Face. And so that was something there. And for 300 cars are in the playoffs, and none of those cars are William Clyde Elliott the second, which is in its own right very interesting. 3 of the top 4 in the final standings last year do not have wins. So it's kind of crazy. And 8 winners. We'll talk about how these different winners and with some of the other drivers that haven't won, how that will affect the overall point standings, since McDriver's already fallen out of the top 16 in points. So that's narrowing things up. In the Truck Series, John Hunter, as a dad, wins over Kyle Busch, and KBM 3 out of the top 5. It's basically John Hunter, Nemechek, and everybody else. We'll get into that, though. Fabio Quartararo keeps the Monster Energy Yamaha team perfect in MotoGP this year. 2 straight wins for him, and they're doing really well right now, beating them Ducatis, but we'll see how that's going to keep on going. Marc Marquez made his return, so we will see how that all works out. Formula E was at Rome last week, and we'll be racing in Valencia this week. We also had Supercars at Simmons Plains for basically a Red Bull benefit. And then we'll move on to the races this weekend, which will be St. Petersburg for the Indy cars and the Cup and Xfinity at Talladega. Talladega will have a dash for Xfinity, will be dash for cash, and Cup will just be a demo derby. And anything else that comes up, we talk about Josh and his sim exploits. Might get into a little football if we have the time. And then we'll get into next week's show, which will be more centered towards the NFL draft, since hopefully I'll have it posted before the NFL draft actually takes place. All right. So with all of that, IndyCars, Alex Palou, I don't think any of us, we didn't pick him. We didn't even act like he existed in a sense. And he went out there, 2-stop strategy, and literally put a whooping on the field. It was basically him and Pato O'Ward all day. It was a straightforward barber race. Very few cautions after the initial accident. So you had to basically make a lot of pace under green, and limiting the amount of time on pit road and the pit stop deltas and all that was key. And it was a major part of why uh, Alex Palou was able to win. But I guess for you, Josh, I mean, Alex Palou last year showed pace at times. He's been a guy in Super Formula who has pace and won. But is this something that you foresaw happening this weekend, or do you feel like it's a precursor of things to come for the rest of the season? Is he really going to be the first guy since Dario Franchitti to challenge Scott Dixon at Chip Ganassi Racing?
Yeah, I think for this weekend, I mean, neither of us picked Alex Palou to win the race, and I mean, I wasn't even sure he was going to be a contender. And some of that is based on how his season went last year. And yeah, he had pace at some of the races, but there was a lot of races where he was kind of an also ran, and I think that mostly had to do with his car, not really his talent. And then also, the history of Chip Ganassi Racing. Yeah, but besides Dario Franchitti, there hasn't really been a driver that really challenged Scott Dixon. And the last couple of years, Felix Rosenquist was in that 10 car, and he didn't really. I mean, there was a couple of races where he challenged Scott Dixon, but he didn't really do a whole lot in that car, and wasn't really a contender like what we saw on Sunday with Alex Palou. So kind of the history, like didn't really think that Palou would be up there in that race. But the first practice, Alex Palou was the fastest guy out there, and I think that should have been an indicator right away that he'd have pace on the race on Sunday. And I think once they got out of the green flag run, and they were able to kind of establish pace there, you kind of saw him kind of close up onto Simon Pagino, close up onto Pato O'Ward at the beginning of that race, or Alex Rossi, sorry, at the beginning of the race. And then Rossi and Pato O'Ward, they pitted early, and then it let Alex Palou take the lead there, and then he went on the two-stop strategy while O'Ward was on that three-stop strategy. And I mean, for O'Ward, it almost worked, I guess, but he had that run in with Sebastian Bourdais in the middle of the race, and I think that kind of affected the handling of his car probably by a lot. It wasn't the same afterwards, and just didn't drive the same, and he didn't have the type of pace that he had throughout the weekend and in the beginning of that race. And plus with O'Ward, like it seemed like his car just wasn't handling right, at least at the beginning of the race. Like there was some parts where you could see the rear tires sliding out of quarter exit on the on the onboard cam of his car, and the Rossi onboard cam as well. And I think part of that showed kind of the difference between Palou and O'Ward is one kind of had maybe a little bit long run pace, I guess, but Alex Palou just was really fast throughout that one. And I think for him going forward, it could be a potential like challenge for him versus Scott Dixon, but he's gonna have to show it again this weekend, I think, in St. Petersburg, because yeah, this is just one race, but then he's also got to bring it the next race as well, and then continuing throughout the season. So I think that's going to be an interesting storyline to watch, is if he can match his pace continuously against Scott Dixon. So I think now that he's got a win like this under his belt, this first career win, maybe that'll give him the confidence, I guess, to really be able to challenge, and the momentum to be able to challenge Scott Dixon there. But a little bit of unexpected winner, I guess, but he went out there and dominated and really earned that win.
Yeah, he's a talent. I mean, for Ganassi over the years, he's given European drivers chances, and Rosenquist being an example most recent, and Ericsson more because he brings money. But in this case, it's a fully funded car. He's taking a chance here with a driver that has the potential long term. I think Rosenquist, he felt, was that guy, and he gave Rosenquist an idea that basically he wasn't going to be retained, which is why he kind of hedged and went off to spam. And they, in their own right, didn't want to keep Oliver Askew for whatever reason. And so it kind of worked out that way. In the sense of Palou, though, it's a great race, great performance. It's one of the best performances seen in a long time out of a younger driver, especially in this series, how talented and how deep it is. To jump into that car, to be Scott Dixon's teammate, it's asking a lot. There's only two people I can remember in Scott Dixon's now nearly 20 years of freaking Chip Ganassi racing that have actually been able to stand up to him. And it's Dario, obviously. And that was before he got there. And then once he got there, and the late Dan Weldon. That's it. There's been nobody else. Not one person that's driven the 10 car has been good outside of those two guys. And the notion of having a young gun who's hungry, who really wants it bad, next to Scott Dixon, when Scott Dixon, he's going to drive until he's like 100, I think. And he's going to beat Chip Ganassi till whatever. He's probably going to own the team in a few years at this rate. But I think it's a positive sign, especially considering they have to battle Penske, and at times they're going to have 4 cars up there. I figure more or less will be 2 cars on a weekly basis. Newgarden's having to make up a ton, which we'll get into in a second. But to have Penske running 2-3 cars at a time that are going to be up there, you have Andretti in theory is going to have at least 2 and possibly 3 cars up there regularly. Ganassi needs to be able to bring 2 cars. They talk about it in Formula One with the whole Mercedes Red Bull deal, which we'll also get into. And it's the same thing here with how deep this series is. And then it's the same thing with spam. And I think that's where the next piece of this goes. Pato O'Ward, fast race car, think fastest driver all day in general. That wasn't Alex Palou. He got back to the front twice under that strategy. But in the end, there was just too much time to make up, and traffic. The Bourdais incident, I think, was probably was one of the factors that eventually led to Pato O'Ward only getting a 4th place finish. He had more pace and willpower than Scott Dixon for sure. He wasn't going to catch Alex Palou, but is it getting to a point now? I mean, the finishing, like being able to close the deal. I was talking to Tom. We did a hit on the Monkey Seat podcast earlier. This afternoon will be out, I think, in the next couple of days or whatever. But Tom Horrocks, who's on the show last week, we talked about this race. It's like, I think for Pato, I mean, closing the deal, like it was like, how Clyde in NASCAR couldn't close. And we're starting to see kind of patterns here where they get there, they're right in a position, or they do something, whether it's pit road, whether it's whatever, it's a strategy decision, or it's a mistake on the track, which, I mean, Pato O'Ward's very young, whatever, he's aggressive. But at some point Pato has to start finishing. And I say this as a fan. What has to happen? Because in the end, I don't think it had anything to do with it. Taylor Kyle, who bangs out Katie Hargett now for life, he went and made that call, and that was the wrong call. You should give your driver the best opportunity to win. He thought 3 stops was the best opportunity. Having 3 stops, you're hoping a caution comes out. But then that with IndyCar races in general, there aren't that many yellows. So I guess what I'm asking, I don't know what you're thinking. I mean, what were your thoughts on Pato O'Ward's day on Sunday, and what has to happen for him to kind of start finishing and becoming that guy that he has been all throughout his career prior to being in an IndyCar?
It's an interesting thing with how his race went on Sunday, because initially, like, he won the pole, and I was like, all right, well, looks like Paddle Ward might, be up there at the end and possibly win this race. But then they went on that different strategy, I guess, from Alex Palou. And with, his strategy, I wonder if the beginning of the race, you had that lap one wreck, Jimmy Johnson spun out and brought out the yellow on like lap 7 or whatever. And you have to wonder, like, did those initial cautions, did his team think like, oh well, we might have a lot of yellows today, let's do a 3-stop strategy rather than a 2-stop strategy, I guess, and go with the tires, I guess, having fresher tires and not worrying about fuel stuff or any of those things. Did that influence their strategy to go on a 3-stop race rather than a 2-stop race? So with all that considered, I mean, maybe they thought with how the race initially played out, they'd go on 3 stops. And if they hadn't done that and they'd gone on 2 stops, maybe we don't see the incident with Sebastian Bourdais in the middle of the race, and where they kind of had their contact there. And maybe he's up there right next to Alex Palou, battling for the lead in the last laps. But then again, like we saw with Will Power, like, Power had to really save up until the last lap to even be able to use push to pass. So even then, it would have been a tough call. But I mean, Paddle Award definitely did have the pace. And then, also, I mean, we say, he's been really fast, but maybe the speed of his car, like his, I guess, ability to drive fast throughout those stints, like it suited him better to do that, to, be on a 3-stop strategy rather on 2 stops. So those are a lot of things you have to consider. But I think going forward, they just have to figure out a way to close out the deal. I mean, um, either figure out a way to go an alternate strategy, make a adjustment to the race, I guess, like depending on how it goes. Like if the race has like no cautions, like try to go for a 2-stop strategy, I guess, or 1-stop strategy or something like that, and try to stretch the fuel so that you're up there at the end. I mean, they have the pace, they just have to figure out how to manage the pace and balance it according to the fuel strategy and the tire strategy, I guess. Do they start on blacks versus reds, or reds versus blacks? I don't know. It's a lot to say. I mean, he has the pace, and definitely should be up there. I mean, the question is that at the end of these races, does he, if he gets challenged, can he fend off the battle, or can he be able to make that pass at the end if he needs to? Those are things that we have to see from him, and his team just has to be able to put him in a better position, I guess, to win. But I think eventually, you have to learn from all these losses, I guess, and I think eventually he'll be able to win one of these. I mean, I think we may see 1 or 2 victories from him this season. So it'll be interesting if they can finally figure out. And when they finally do figure out, it's going to be a pretty big win for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think I picked him, and the fact is he had it. He had the fastest car, and it's a lost opportunity, but he goes to a track now this coming weekend at St. Pete where he finished second to Joseph Newgarden, and he had great pace. He's won there. I think he's won at both of those, both Barber and St. Pete in a Indy Lights car, of course. So the time is coming. This team, and I said it on Monkey Seat, that over their history, going back to Sam Schmidt, they weren't known as great closers. They'd have their moments. James Hinchcliffe won a few races for them, but it was few and far between. You'd have a win, and then you'd have a whole lot of nothing. When Robbie was there, he and Alexander Rossi, he had the lead, and Rossi ran into him on one of the late restarts, and that handed a win to Bourdais at St. Pete. History of that organization is not known to be the strongest in a lot of ways, but Pato O'Ward is the real deal, and they need to tighten things up. I don't believe it was his fault this week or last weekend. Give him the opportunity to take care of it on the racetrack. Don't take it out of his hands. That's fundamentally what it has to be. That's my thoughts. But hey, that's whatever. To each his own, I guess. Palou, Will Powers, Scott Dixon, the podium. Pato Award, Sebastian Bourdais for AJ Foyt. They led 4 laps in that, the Rocket car. And Rinus VK led a lap, and he finished 6th. Graham Rehal in the Code 3 Associates car finished 7th. Ericsson Rossi, after starting 2nd, finished 9th. Romain Grosjean finished 10th. And that kind of goes into the rookie part. Grosjean, nothing to complain about for him. Started 7th, finished 10th. For a Dale Coyne car, that's not bad. For a Rick Ware car, that's amazing. But then it also helped there's only 24 cars, so you couldn't even shit brick this. You have Scott McLaughlin, started 12th, finished 14th, kind of struggled. And then, of course, Jimmy Johnson, who didn't finish last and didn't qualify last. And he did spin out once, lost a lap, kind of was behind for the rest of the day, but ran good lap times. They did the Miss Hummer coverage on him. They played, I think, 3 or 4 different commercials he had. I mean, it was pretty insane. I mean, the difference is I respect Jimmy Johnson, and so it's fine. I think it's better for this series when you can't even draw one on network TV. You shouldn't really be pushing away anybody that could bring additional eyeballs to the sport. It is over the top, but it's something where he's brand new to this, like literally ran a handful of sports car races or whatever over the year, like proper sports car races. He's run, I think, 2, and then he's never run Indy Lights, never run any type of open wheel thing since he ran buggies when he was a teenager on dirt. And then now you're going to jump in an IndyCar against this field, which the vast majority of these guys are really effing good. That's asking a lot. With that, Josh, I mean, I have my thoughts. I mean, Grosjean is not shocking. When his head is on right, he can drive well. I think he's like a lesser version of Sebastian Bourdais. And in a lot of ways, that's basically what he is. What he was able to get better opportunities in Formula One, so he could get podiums and the whole bit. But I think he could have a Bourdais-like career in IndyCar given time, and maybe moving to a better organization. But we'll see what happens with that. McLaughlin, of course, is running the whole year. Pressure will be on him to perform. First race out, new track for him. We'll see what he does this weekend, I would think. And then Johnson, is 7-time. What are you going to do? It's asking a lot, really, to perform in this series, given the learning curve that he has.
Yeah, for Johnson, I think I've talked about it before, but the challenge is going to be for him the amount of downforce and the difference of that between the Sprint Cup car, the Monster Cup car, whatever, to the Indy car. And with the Indy car, he's going to have to drive a lot deeper into the corners, and when he's at a road course or at some of the short ovals, well, they're still kind of full without even those tracks. But I mean, at a lot of these short ovals, like with the Cup car, you have a longer braking distance at the road courses than you do in IndyCar. In IndyCar, you can drive really deep in the corner, get on the brakes really quickly, downshift, and then kind of get back into it, and you're back onto the straight or whatever. But with the Cup car, they have to really finesse the handling and all that stuff. And I think for Johnson, the challenge is going to be for him to kind of get used to that level of downforce, and then just be able to at least maintain some kind of level of pace with the rest of the field. And I think for this is a good start for him. I mean, he's 19th and had a couple of laps down, but I mean, it's all about him getting seat time and getting experience in that car. So going forward, I mean, if he can improve and at least maintain lead lap pace throughout the rest of the event, even if he does end up being the last car on the lead lap, I think that's probably going to be good enough for him. It's all about the challenge and being able to race and compete against some of the best open wheel drivers in America. So for him, that's what I think it'll be. And I think on Sunday, you kind of saw that struggle at the beginning, and then they ended up falling laps down. So I think improving forward, they've got to be able to just improve upon that, I guess. And then Grosjean, I mean, I'm not surprised either. And that's just based on his experience in open wheel from before. And he qualified seventh and ended up finishing 10th. So a little bit of drop off there at the end of the race. But I mean, not really surprised by his level of pace and his ability to drive an open wheel car. I mean, I think if anything, he's probably a lesser version of Sebastian Bourdais, but he'll probably be limited by Dale Coyne Racing equipment, I guess. And maybe he'd have to be in a Chip Ganassi car or Andretti car, even a Penske car to really see what he could do with an Indy car. But I think for him, he'll continue to finish solidly, I guess, at all these road course tracks. And then I think with Scott McLaughlin, I mean, he's definitely got the most potential, I think, out of the three rookies. And I think when it comes to the ovals, he's definitely going to have a lot of chances and a lot of opportunities to finish well. But at the road courses, I think definitely have a little bit of a challenge, kind of the same transition that Jimmy Johnson has. But I think the V8 supercar is a lot different compared to the Cup car. So I think maybe the transition is going to be a little bit quicker. And obviously, I think as we go throughout the season and they have more tests and more practice sessions, I think he'll get a little bit more acclimated on the road courses. And we're coming up to St. Petersburg, which he's been to before. So now that he has at least a race of experience, maybe we're going to see a little bit different result from McLaughlin this weekend. And then going forward, it's going to be interesting to see what's he going to be like at some of these places like Road America or Laguna Seca and some of these other street courses like Long Beach as well. I think we're going to see a very interesting season from McLaughlin, and with V8 supercars, they've been able to race on street courses and on road courses, so he's used to it. It's just being able to have the same level of pace relative to the car like he has in the V8 supercars. But his season, I mean, it's going to be interesting. And I mean, he's going to win Rookie of the Year by default, like we've said. And then I think next year, going forward and future years, is he going to be able to be the top driver at Penske? I think that's probably the question for him.
Yeah, his deal is more about building upon his experience and learning from all the people that are there. You have two drivers that are on the back end of their career in Power and Pagano. Pagano, of course, knows he's going to have a sports car career no matter what he does, so he's fine. And he's going to be sponsored by Menards, I think, for life. So he's also got employment that way. With Power, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but the reality is Newgarden's going to be there for the long haul. He's just missing the Indy 500 at this point from basically being employed for life. And McLaughlin's that X factor guy. He's the New Zealand driver that Penske's been searching for since Scott Dixon went to freaking Ganassi. He's waited 20 plus years and he finally's got one. McLaughlin has the talent potential to do whatever he wants. They thought NASCAR was going to be his path initially, and then he expressed, I think, a willingness or interest in IndyCar, got in one, and was very fast, and it all changed. And but like you said, Josh, in regards to the supercars, I mean, yeah, they're in between. I think they're definitely not like the Cup cars of today. They're definitely not an Indy car, but they're kind of in between. They have a little more downforce, a little more stability, and kind of bits and pieces and hard braking and all kind of things that kind of exist within IndyCar, but then you have power steering and some of the other pieces that definitely don't. McLaughlin will figure it out, and I think he'll figure it out by middle of the season. Jimmy Johnson, this is a whole learning year. I think the end game for him is to run Indy in 22 as part of like a walk-off, or at least a partial walk-off. I think his future is going to be in sports cars. I think I forget what story or who posted it. But somebody was reading on Twitter where it was like, Dale Earnhardt wanted to go and run sports cars after he was done with NASCAR. And so Jimmy Johnson's like, I want to run Indy cars and I want to run sports cars. So I guess it's kind of what 1 7-time champion didn't get to do it. So another one's going to get to. And we'll see how that goes. I mean, his goal is to not be last in sessions or qualify last in races. I think it sounds extreme or it sounds horrible, but there are drivers he can beat on this grid, honestly. And that's just based on who he is and who he drives for. Those two things alone, he can beat some of the guys that are on this grid, honestly. And it's about beating those guys weekly and see what happens otherwise. Don't make any major errors like, spinning yourself out, whatever, getting an aero wash kind of deal, like what's going to happen at Talladega this weekend. Like, go and keep yourself clean, give yourself a chance, run full races and learn. And Jimmy Johnson's one of the greatest ever. He'll figure it out. Grosjean is going to have his moments this year where, he looks like a pretty good race car driver, and then he'll look like Romain Grosjean, mainly because he drives for Rick Ware. So that's something we will see. St. Petersburg this weekend, very difficult race, very treacherous. I don't know. Are you going this weekend for St. Pete?
Yeah, I'll be there on Sunday. I ended up buying tickets to it and going to be around St. Petersburg, I guess, the whole weekend. Got some friends from college that live there, so going to be seeing some friends there and then be watching the race there in person on Sunday. So never been to an IndyCar race, so it's going to be exciting and going to be, I guess, the between turn 9 and turn 10, I guess, at St. Pete. So definitely going to be watching the cars go into the hard braking zone there before the last corner and the finish line. So that's going to be a real interesting sight to see. And, maybe I'll buy a Jimmy Johnson shirt or a Simon Pagenaud shirt or Alex Rossi shirt, one of those guys. I mean, I like a lot of the IndyCar guys, so probably have to get some IndyCar gear as well during the weekend.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive stuff, so go and pick wisely. The fact of the matter is we could go and use our, I think, what is it, GSP 28 on CircleBdiecast.com for IndyCar merch, so definitely use that. I got free shipping on a order I just did a few days ago, so it does pay off. Plenty of Jimmy Johnson stuff. Not as much for other guys that have been around a long time, but hey, tells when you know how to do merch and you've done it for 2 decades plus, I guess you go and put out good merch and good looking car too, the Carvana car. So we'll see and enjoy. Of course, you'll have fun. Indy cars are awesome. You'll get to see the road to Indy, which will probably be a little more exciting in some ways because of the ability for them to pass and the kind of hunger. And so, yeah, we'll talk about that next week as well on the GSP. We'll get your firsthand accounts of going to St. Pete, which has become one of the flagship races on the calendar behind, of course, the 500 and Long Beach. And I think Gateway really has become one of those as well that stand out as big time races for this calendar. So we'll get your thoughts on that next week, Josh, and also about what ended up happening at St. Pete for the IndyCar series. On to Formula One. and Max Verstappen going out and winning the Parmigiano Reggiano Grand Prix at Imola, and that was uh, basically given. Even though he didn't qualify on pole, Lewis ended up qualifying on pole, getting his 99th pole of his career, and he tried to do the overcut, didn't work because they had a bad pit stop, and then it just kind of unraveled from there. Max Verstappen got the start. There was rain at the start of the race or before the start of the race, and he was able to get past both Lewis and his teammate Sergio Perez, got away, and it really wasn't much of a race for the for the vast majority of it. What is it? Nicholas Latifi and Egghead got into it, and Williams ended up with one destroyed race car on the first lap, and Egghead drove off and finished last of the classified finishers of those classified. I mean, then you had the wreck that we'll talk about in a little bit that took out a couple of guys there, and so yeah, a complete restart after that Bottas Russell wreck, and Verstappen got away, and it was over because Lewis Hamilton had to take a wave around. I think he was ninth. They didn't decide to do a standing start, which I think was dumb. They should have just done a standing start, and it might have been a different race, but whatever. At that point, it doesn't matter. I think Imola, for as much as everyone wanted to be nostalgic about it, there's a reason why they stopped going there. And when you basically only have one passing zone at a naturally, a natural terrain circuit, uh, you probably, and it's way too narrow and whatever, all the other things that kind of exist with Imola. It's why they don't go there anymore. We'll be going to a more modern circuit here in a couple weeks' time at Portimao to see the Formula One cars, where they can kind of open up or get opened up and kind of press all the aspects of the car. Verstappen, Hamilton, Lando Norris gets another podium for McLaren. So a great start to the year for Lando Norris, in responding to having Daniel Ricciardo as his teammate, who's still trying to get used to this McLaren. Ferraris finished fourth and fifth, Leclerc and Sainz. And then Pierre Gasly, who started fifth, ended up finishing seventh. The Aston Martin of Stroll is able to finish, of course, while his teammate has to go and retire for the second race in a row. And then Ocon and Alonso for Alpine finished ninth and 10th. Sergio Perez, I think, had a time penalty, which ended up knocking him out of the points. And Yuki Tsunoda had different things going on there. I think Kimi Räikkönen also had a time penalty, which for, I think, track limits for Räikkönen, and I think Sergio Perez had something with the pits, and that's why both of them ended up outside of the point. So, yeah, Max Verstappen, he's a point behind Lewis Hamilton because of the fastest lap point for Lewis. This is the battle that everyone has wanted for a long time, and I think we're definitely going to have it this year between the two best drivers in Formula One.
Yeah, this race, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of action for the lead, but definitely the crash between George Russell and Valtteri Bottas kind of at least made it for the highlight reel there. And then, the battle between Verstappen, I mean, he was just basically out there the entire race, was able to beat Lewis Hamilton on the restart after the red flag, and then it was just basically cruise from there. And then Lewis Hamilton, I mean, he had crash damage from spinning out, and he had the bit of mistakes, I guess, throughout some of those on that restart and on the initial start. And just wasn't the race that Lewis Hamilton needed. But at the end, he was able to make his way back up and get up to second and still tie and then get the fastest lap and be able to hold his point lead over 1 point over Max Verstappen. And I think, for him, I mean, he still has the lead, but he's definitely under thin ice, at least so far going into this year in Formula One. So I think going into the next race, he's going to be a little bit under pressure, I guess, to try and win to at least keep the points lead. And then I think for Verstappen, he's just got to go out there and keep winning, or at least get second and just continue to maintain the pressure on Lewis Hamilton. And at least finally we're having initially, at least into the season, we're having a good points battle between Lewis Hamilton and whoever is in second, and that being Max Verstappen this year. So between those two, I mean, you're seeing the pace from Red Bull, and then also the Mercedes. While they do have pace as well, they're seemingly weaker, I guess, this year, and it's given the opportunity for Red Bull to at least get closer and maybe be equal to them. But then I think we have to also mention McLaren and Lando Norris. I mean they were basically in the podium most of that race, and then they were in second after Hamilton fell back, and then Hamilton was able to get around Lando there at the end of the race and just had a little bit more pace. Lando wasn't able to hold them off, but still a good result getting third for him. So I think you talked about it with Ricardo. I think Ricardo is definitely at least challenging Lando Norris, and definitely for both of those guys, it's good. Although I think Ricardo probably wants to see a little bit better result, and been sixth, probably wants to finish a little bit higher, at least try to get a podium. So McLaren continuing to separate themselves from the midfield, and I think as we go throughout the season, they'll probably end up being third in the constructors, and potentially I think Lando Norris end up being third on the drivers standings at the end of the season. So I think we may be seeing what the season's going to look like, at least for the top three. But then I think also in the midfield, a little bit different results this time, and Alpine finishing both in the top 10 and getting points. Fernando Alonso getting his first points of the year, albeit just 1 point in 10th. And then Sergio Perez probably should have had a better race, and still continuing to have the, I guess, bad luck in the second Red Bull car. So I think that's going to be another challenge there if Sergio Perez can also finish well and have good races, because I think that's just going to help Max Verstappen in his title fight with Lewis Hamilton there. But there was also definitely some incidents there. I mean, we mentioned it earlier with George Russell and Valtteri Bottas. That was kind of the highlight of the race, I guess, outside of the rain. And I think for George Russell, it's another mistake, I guess. But he's learning, and I think he probably wrecked the guy he's probably going to take over eventually at Mercedes. But I think for them, I mean, it was definitely a bad incident, and I'm pretty sure Valtteri Bottas probably isn't happy with George Russell. But I think Russell's probably going to have to just talk to him, and they'll hash it out, I guess, and give their takes on what happened there, and they'll move on. But I mean, for Valtteri Bottas, this isn't the result that he needed, because I mean, he's still trying to win the championship as well, and or at least get a good points finish, and this is not something he wanted to see. So it's going to be a dent in his I guess race for the title. And I mean, for him to have that, I mean, maybe he might not finish in the top three at the end of the year, but we'll have to see what the results end up being. But I mean, for Russell, just another mistake, but I mean, he'll learn, and definitely another bad result for him. But I mean, he just has to move on from it and be able to just grow from that incident, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think that George did anything wrong. You could say it was aggressive, but I don't think he did anything wrong there, honestly. I think that Botas did move, or at least there was like a juke of some sort. I know that you you would have more experience in terms of having to deal with it on the sim side. Where if somebody makes a quick move where that could affect your path or wherever you have to go, and in turn could cause an accident. Um, the fact that Bottas was running that far back is the story as much as anything. Everyone talks about all the other crap. Uh, what do you call the Total Wolf saying, "Oh, you should be in Clio Cup," and then Renault Clio Cup going and jumping in on it. It's like, okay, we'll go and pay for your entry fee. You just have to go. Like, that was a good job by Renault and the Clio Cup for responding to that. Great promotion too, in their part, going across brands. But um, Bottas has it's 2 races so far this year, and he has not really been a factor in either of them. He was a little more of a factor at Bahrain, but he was a non-factor the whole entire weekend. Qualified 8th, and basically was just out there. He's kind of in the way. And I think that's a fundamental problem when you consider they're trying to run a full calendar. I mean, they aren't going to run a full calendar the way that it was laid out initially. Like, the Canadian Grand Prix is not going to happen. And they're trying to hedge for that. I think they're going to go to Turkey again. Hopefully they put rubber down so that it's not like a shit show. You have to wonder about the U.S. Grand Prix at Coda too at this point. I think there's enough time that they might be able to run it. But of course, with all nonsense going on here, never know. But, I think that wreck, yeah, it could have been prevented. Yeah, you didn't have to make that move, but that's the only passing zone on the racetrack. And he was a faster car, which in its own right is kind of scary. That George was going faster than Bottas in a Williams. Say it for what it is. I mean, Lewis had a hard time passing. I forget who that kid was. Initially on the restart when he was starting 9th, it took him 5-6 laps to pass whoever the heck he was behind, and that was part of the reason why he couldn't go. His race basically was run. I think it was Lance Stroll, because the Aston Martin's a dog, and basically a dog turd, and it was just in the way, and he couldn't pass him. And then it took a couple of laps every single time he had to get to the next car to pass him. And, you're giving up 3 to 3 seconds a lap behind some of these cars, 3 to 5 seconds a lap. The Max Verstappen won by over 20 seconds or whatever the hell it is. Here, he won by 22 seconds in the end. So can't give up that much time. That mistake that he made trying to pass Russell at Tosa was theoretically the deciding factor. I think the deciding factor happened on the start. If he actually has a decent start, he might be able to dictate strategy. He might be able to dictate a few things there. Instead, the bad start and then all the other stuff that came along with that, it really didn't matter. Max went out there and won that race because he made the start. He gave himself the opportunity to control the race, and he did. So 1-1 going to Portimao next, not this weekend, but the following weekend for the second Portuguese Grand Prix at Portimao in a few months' time. So we'll see how that all goes here next week, and we'll talk about that on the GSP. On to the third X, and X marks the spot with Alex Bowman winning on the same day as Jimmy Johnson made his IndyCar debut. The 48 car got its first Cup win since 2017 at Dover, and that was Alex Bowman's win on Sunday at Richmond, taking it away from Dennis Hamlin and Joey Logano, among others, who had the better cars there. Bowman, and there's the thing they're trending of when Alex Bowman wins a race the track closes or whatever. First was Chicago, now it's California Speedway or whatever. They're not racing there this year, and they're not going to race. Supposedly they're going to race there next year, but I don't buy it. And now Richmond. So hopefully for my sake, they don't close Richmond. But even though it's not a great racetrack anymore, at least with this car, at least with the Gen, for a while, they haven't had good racing at Richmond, I think, since the Gen 5 car came along and Gen 6. So hopefully the new one will be better. But Bowman the Showman had a rocket there at the last restart, Josh, and was able to go and take a much needed win in a sense to go and lock himself in the playoffs with his teammates Byron and Larson. And at the same token, defending series champion, the second place driver in points last year and the fourth place driver in points, who is the runaway points leader this year, don't have wins in the Cup Series.
Yeah, for Alex Bowman, I mean, we didn't predict him winning either. We talked about not predicting Alex Blow. Well, we definitely didn't predict Alex Bowman there. And I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. And Greg Ives made the right call, I guess, at the end. They made an air pressure adjustment, from what I understand, and that really like helped the car just take off on the restart. And he said that I guess they were able to try that out at the initial part of the race. So, like they had the competition caution, and they were able to kind of try that same adjustment, and then they had it in their back pocket for later. And when they knew that they had the pace on that initial part, so they kind of took what they learned from that and applied it to the very end of the race, and they had that opportunity. And then that just allowed Alex Bowman to go up there and take the lead away from Denny Hamlin, and then steal the win there. But for him, I mean, it's his third win now in the Cup Series, and he hasn't really like been a guy that's been able to show himself at multiple races. But I mean, if he can, win at least a couple times a year, I think that should be the type of career that I guess he has. But I mean, this year, they've been kind of inconsistent, I guess, at the races. They've either been in the top 10, kind of there, maybe being able to contend, or they've kind of either had bad luck, or they just didn't have the handling right in the car. So I think this maybe will help them kind of spring forward their season and be a little bit more consistent. But I mean, now they are the third Hendrick car to win a race, and we haven't seen Chase Elliott win. And I mean, I don't think for Chase Elliott that's a lack of pace or whatever. I think they just haven't had the right luck, I guess, to win, because it's definitely a hard series to win, although there are 8 drivers now winning. So for Hendrick, really, I mean, they have to be proud of themselves, but still, it's still kind of the beginning of the season and first third of the year, I guess, and they're definitely got a lot of time to for everybody else to catch up and for them to be able to improve. But for Denny Hamlin, I think you have to talk about his ability to lead races. I mean, last week at Phoenix, he led a bunch of that, or at not at Phoenix, but at Martinsville, he was able to lead a lot of that race. And then at Richmond here, he led the most laps again, but he didn't close. And it's beginning to become a trend for Denny Hamlin this year. And he said in post race, like he wasn't able, even though he wasn't able to win, he was still glad he was in that position, because he'd rather be somebody that would lead more laps and not win than somebody like Bowman, I guess, or Truex, that maybe doesn't dominate like he does and win the race. Which I found that to be an odd quote, but I don't really know why anyone would say that, because I'd rather win than finish second. I think. I mean, I think anybody would know that, but it's beginning to become a trend. And even though they are leading point standings, I think you have to be a little bit concerned for his ability at the end of the year to win, because that's what it's going to come down to at Phoenix at the end of the year for whoever ends up winning the title, is that they're going to have to make the race winning pass at some point. And if it comes down to a late restart, do you trust Denny Hamlin to be able to close the deal like that? And we've seen him at late restarts, like at Richmond, and then at Bristol, where he had a chance to either defend the lead or take the lead away, and he wasn't able to do both. So it's going to be something to watch, I guess, for Denny Hamlin going forward, and throughout the rest of the year. But nothing at Richmond really happened. I mean, there was a spin out, I think, for Ryan Newman there with Austin Cindric, but I mean, a very uneventful race. A lot of green flag runs, which seem to become the norm for Richmond. Spence Gen 6 car. I think a lot of it has to do with how they prepare the track. They talked about like having sealer on the racetrack. Like if you go back to the mid 2000s, early 2000s, late 90s, when Richmond reconfigured after its original design, the track was very shiny looking and asphalt was a lot more blacker than it is now. And they say that they don't do it anymore because they're worried about I guess, the life time of the asphalt, and if they had the sealer it could cause the asphalt to fall apart more quickly. So that might be why they don't have sealer, but I think it's a combination of the Gen 6 car just not really being that great, and then also just the track just not working well with the tires, I guess. And maybe with the next car we'll see a little bit more of Richmond being the action track, which it's I guess that's its nickname. And certainly over the years, the last couple of years, there hasn't really been a whole lot of action to talk about at Richmond. So congrats to Alex Bowman and all those guys. They did a good job at the end being able to execute the strategy correctly. But Richmond just happened and wasn't much of a race other than the end.
Yeah, and that's typical. I've been there a few times, and the races there have not been good. And that was with, I think, the big ass spoiler the one time, and then of course I have 550 package another time, and so now they have a 750 with a small blade, and it's just basically a bore fest. I think there was 8 cars on the lead lap, which, I mean, here's the thing for all the people I want to talk about NASCAR, and they do all these gimmicks and whatever. That's what a lot of these races used to be. There used to be, if they're going to have super long green flag runs, you're going to lap most of the field, and that's what happened. You had 8 cars on the lead lap. I think there was 10 or whatever, 11, whatever that could worked out to be in the end. Let's go to the result just to confirm. So there you had, or with the wave around, it ended up with 14 cars on the lead lap. Brad Keselowski in 14th there. So Bowman, Hamlin, Logano, Christopher Bell, Martin Truex. So Gibbs cars 3 out of the top 5. Almirola gets his best finish of the year in 6th. Byron, Kyle Busch, D. Burrito, and Dylan. Blaney, Clyde, Kurt Busch, Keselowski, and Ross Chastain first car 1 lap down, with Daniel Suarez in 16th. So in the grand scheme, there wasn't a whole lot that came out of that deal, that race. It wasn't the most exciting. There's 2 guys that dominated. It was Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex. They led 314 of the 400 laps. Outside of that, you had Joey Logano led nearly 50 laps. So then you get into that, then you have 363 of the 400 laps was led by 3 guys. So it was pretty straightforward. People talk about how it's a short track. It ain't a short track. People complain about Iowa. Richmond's the same thing. It's more like a 1.5 mile racetrack than it is a short track. So for what it's worth, we'll see what happens as they go to Talladega, where they're going to just destroy 3/4 of the field. So, and the race really won't be much of a race anyway. We will see how that whole thing comes around. In the Truck Series race, John Hunter Nemechek gets another win and solidifies his spot as the favorite in the Truck Series. I mean, Kyle Busch, he beats Kyle Busch. Chandler Smith gets a 4th place finish. Similar to the Cup Series race, there really was only two vehicles or 3 vehicles that were up there. Grant Enfinger led 71 laps in the 98 truck and finished 1st and 2nd in the stages, swapping those with John Hunter. They led It's like 185 of the 250 laps, and then you count another 50 laps there between Kyle Busch and Chandler Smith. So there's 4 vehicles that led on Saturday. Sam Ayre started tailback, finished top 10. Johnny Sauter started 19th, finished 5th. Tyler Ankrum finished 3rd after starting 30th. So that was a big run for him. Defending series champion Sheldon Creed finished 11th. You had a lot of trucks on the lead lap. You had 22 trucks on the lead lap at the end of the day. Guys like Truex has had problems all year, had a terrible finish dead last. Jennifer Ho Cobb, who trended this past week or last few days because she didn't get approved for Talladega. People say it's because she ran and her and Norm Benning got into it. She's intentionally wrecked people on the racetrack. Some of the other antics that she's been known for, and the fact it's Rick Ware probably didn't help. They'll stay the consistently inconsistent and selective enforcement aspect of it aside. There's that's typical NASCAR though. So in regards to John Hunter Nemechek, I don't think I think we figured it was going to happen, that he was going to be a factor, but he's definitely dominating. And maybe it's just because it's the first time in his career he's been in really great, fully funded equipment. And now he's showing what he's about. Now he's a dad too, so he's really more motivated as well, and he's looking for the next step in his career. And I mean, I don't know how he loses this. I don't see how he loses this championship, really. He would need to have like what happened to William Byron, to have like one like huge, really bad race and just have a bad round in the playoffs or something. That's literally the only way that he loses this championship. I don't know about you, Josh, but there's just no way that with everything they got going there with the leadership and his crew chief, the whole bit. I don't know, Eric Phillips. I don't see how he doesn't close the deal.
Well, for John Hunter Nemechek, he's definitely established himself as the best driver here in the Truck Series so far, and he's led 257 laps to start the season here in 2021 in the Truck Series. And you compare that to Ben Rhodes, who's won 2 races as well and has just as many top 10s, but he's only led 27 laps. So that it just shows you the contrast between the 2 drivers. And I know for Hunter Nemechek, a lot of that did come in the last race here at Richmond, but still, I mean, the number of laps led between the 2 is so different. And I think for John Hunter Nemechek, like he's been able to beat Kyle Busch 2 times at Las Vegas and then here at Richmond. And I think, for the first time, really, like, normally we see Kyle Busch enter a truck race and you can more than likely pencil him in as the race winner. And the last couple of times, it just seems like Kyle Busch isn't as quick, I guess, at these truck races, and it's his own car beating him, which I think is pretty good and shows a lot of progress for KBM, that they're actually able to have their other cars win races besides Kyle Busch. But then also, I mean, it just shows you that John Nemechek is really talented in these cars, and definitely when he has a good car behind him, a good truck behind him, he's able to go out and dominate races and win and beat Kyle Busch at truck races. So I think that this win does say a lot for him and his season, and also for his his career and his talent ability. Like if he's able to get into a better ride in the Cup Series or even the Xfinity Series, and he's able to compete for race wins and championships, I mean, I think he's going to be able to do that. So I think for him, this win, while not really that big of a win, I mean, it is a little bit of a statement, I guess, in that he's able to win 2 races now and secure his spot for the Truck Series playoffs at the end of the season. And just the fact that he's been able to beat Kyle Busch twice this season, I think just says a lot for him as for his season.
Yeah, that's why he hired him. Kyle Busch knows he doesn't really make a whole lot of money doing this deal. So he knows that he wants to win both the drivers and the owners. So he might make a few bucks back doing this. And he needed a higher driver. And now he has. And John Hunter's hungry. He's got a lot on the table right now to try to go and make this happen so he can go and have a career. So it's all right. We're going to go and see how this goes along. A couple of weeks off. They'll be running Kansas, I think, next week, not this coming weekend, but the following week for a truck series. And they got, was it Coda and Charlotte, Darlington, Coda, and Charlotte. Oh, so they might be running. Yeah, I think Darlington might be. I don't know. Who cares? Fucking it's early in the season. Who gives a fuck? And anyways, John Hunter Nemechek's going to win the championship. Going to the roundup here in before we go on all the picks, got to talk about the MotoGP World Championship. They were at Portimao, where Formula One will be here next week, and we'll talk about that on the GSP in regards to the race results. You saw Fabio Quartararo go and win his second consecutive race, as I mentioned earlier, and great start to the season for the Monster Energy Yamaha outfit, 3 for 3. Quartararo over Pecco Bagnaia and defending world champion Joan Mir. Franco Morbidelli finished 4th on the Petronas Yamaha. Brad Binder on the KTM finished 5th. Alex Espargaro 6th. Mark Marquez, the 8-time world champion, making his return, finished 7th. His brother Alex finished 8th. Ania Bastianini finished 9th, and Taka Nakagami on the second. What is it? I'm forgetting the team that he rides for, but LCR Honda team finished 10th. Maverick Vinales 11th. You go through some of the other guys on points. Outside of the points, Miguel Oliveira, Johan Zarco, DNF'd, Alex Rins, Valentino Rossi, Jack Miller, Pol Espargaro, all DNF'd out of this race. So Quartararo goes into the next race, which will be the Spanish Grand Prix at in the next week. You say Spanish Grand Prix, there's 3 races in Spain anyway. So Valencia, Aragon, they'll be racing at I think Catalunya, and that'll be next week on the MotoGP, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail there. Quartararo takes a 15-point lead over Pecco Bagnaia, who has 2 podiums so far this year, versus Quartararo's 2 firsts and a 5th. And then Maverick Vinales is 3rd with a win, a 5th and 11th. Johan Zarco had 2 seconds at Qatar and then didn't even score points last week. You have Joan Mir with a 4th, 7th, and 3rd. Alex Espargaro with 3 top 10s. Alex Rins, who didn't score last week. Binder, Bastianini, and Jorge Martin, your top 10 as they go into the next round at Catalunya. And then you had Formula E last race at Rome, and then they'll be racing at Valencia at the Ricardo Tormo circuit this coming weekend. So they're actually running on a permanent road course. So that'll be something. And before they go to Monaco in a couple weeks' time. So need something to see for sure. Romy Pre saw the first race with Jean-Eric Verne defending for former champion, win over Sam Bird and Mitch Evans for the Jaguar team. Robin Frines and Sebastian Buemi finishing 4th and 5th. Rene Rast, Pascal Verlaine, Alex Lynn for Mahindra, Maxi Gunther for Andretti, and Nick Cassidy for Virgin, the top 10. And then in race 2, Stoffel Van Dorn won for Mercedes over Alexander Sims, who races for Mahindra, Pascal Verlaine for Porsche, Eduardo Mortara for Venturi, Gunther, and Evans, defending champion Antonio Felix da Costa, former champion Sebastian Buemi, there in 8th, Tom Blomqvist, and Nico Muller rounds out the top 10. In regards to the standings, Sam Bird leads by 4 points over his teammate Mitch Evans, and he has a 9-point lead over Robin Frines and 10 over Stoffel Van Dorn. Nick Vries 5th, Verline 6th, 11 points back. Eduardo Mortara is 13 points back in 7th. Jean-Eric Verne's one win is his points tally so far this year. Otherwise, he didn't have any scores. Sims and DaCosta in his title defense has a lot of room to make up. He's 22 points behind in the top 10. And then also Supercars, sorry. So we had Supercars last week at Simon's Plains, and in regards to the super sprint there at Tasmania Super Sprint, and we had Marcus Ambrose return, go on TV. He also drove Will Davison's car and made him sweat a little bit. So that'll be something that we see for that. Let me just go into this right here. That's not, that's good. That, and then Supercars. The Repco Supercars Challenge, the championship for the 2021 season. The races so far this year have seen Shane Van Gisbergen and Jamie Whincup, Chaz Mostert, the winners last week. Shane Van Gisbergen's been dominant so far this year. He won the first 5 or first 6 races of the season before his teammate, the retiring Jamie Whincup, basically the Jimmy Johnson of V8 Supercars, in his last year before he takes over ownership of the organization and running the organization, what is now Triple Eight. And then Chaz Mostert for Walkinshaw Andretti United, getting his first win in a few years. So Holden's have won all 8 races so far this year. Van Gisbergen's well ahead in points. 139-point lead over Whincup, 165-point lead over Mostert. Cam Waters is the closest forward. He's over 200 points behind right now, and Will Davison in 5th. You have Frosty Winterbottom, David Reynolds driving for the Kellys in a Penrite Ford, Anton Di Pasquale in the Shell V-Power Mustang, and then Nick Percat and Brody Kostecki. It's a close battle between Percat and all the way going down to Scott Pye. So 9th through 13th are only separated by 11 points. Their next race will be at the OTR Super Sprint at the Bend Motorsports Park. That's 3 weeks away. So be a little while, and then they'll go to Winton. So there'll be some time between now and then. So hopefully the Fords can actually get a little more competitive. We'll transfer over to St. Pete and the IndyCar series this coming week at the Honda Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. And I'll throw to you, Josh, first. You could go and tell us who you think will win. We'll do it this way. Who do you think will win? Who do you think will win pole? Who do you think will win? And who's a dark horse pick?
Well, I think for this race here, I think pole. I'm going to go with Joseph Newgarden winning the pole. I mean, he's had a lot of pace at St. Petersburg in the past, and I mean, he did win the last 2 events at St. Petersburg, so I think he definitely, at least pace wise, he could be up there. I think for the win, I'm going to go with Pato O'Ward. I think with the results that he's been getting, I think he's learned a lot, and I think maybe this is the weekend that he actually figures it out and wins the race. I mean, I think other guys that can contend. I mean, he's not really a wild card, but I mean, Alexander Rossi, I mean, led the most laps last year in this race back in October, and ended up wrecking. So I think for him, if he's able to be up there, I think that's definitely possible. I think, you know, another wild card that maybe we have to think of is maybe somebody like Connor Daly. I mean, they didn't have the greatest race, I guess, at Barber, but I think maybe here they maybe have a little bit more pace and maybe finish somewhere top 10, I guess, or maybe outside of the top 10. I think maybe another guy to look out for is Rinus VK. He's definitely had a lot of good speed so far at Barber, and I think, you know, he ended up finishing 6th last weekend at Barber. So maybe that result kind of translates, I guess, into another top 10 run, or maybe a top 5 run here at St. Petersburg this weekend. But I think overall it's going to be Pato O'Ward winning the race here and getting his first win in the IndyCar series.
I think that'll be a good pick. I like that pick, at least. Pato O'Ward going and getting that win. I'll go a little different here. I'll go with Scott Dixon. He finally gets a win at St. Petersburg. He's never won there. He hasn't won at Barber still, but I think Dixon goes out there and wins, not because of what he did last October in this race, but, you know, at some point you would think that the greatest of all time, or one of the greatest of all time, will go and win at circuits he hasn't won at. And so to me, the way Ganassi ran last week, I think the momentum's in their favor. And for Dixon to go and get past one of the places where he hasn't been able to win before, it would be a good momentum shift as he goes to Texas, goes to Indianapolis, where he's won at, you know, going into some of those races, which he's more familiar with winning. In regards to the pole, I agree with you, Josh. I think Newgarden starts on pole, but Ganassi and them beat him on strategy. And in terms of a wild card, I mean, thinking about this right now, in regards to the Indy cars, I'm trying to look at who would be a good choice as a wild card. I'm having a hard time here. I mean, it really shouldn't be that hard, but you know, I'll check activity here.
I mean, that's how competitive this series is. It's hard to pick a wild card.
Yeah, I know. It's just a blank. I mean, for me, I mean, I need to figure out something here, but um, just need a second because I'm trying to think outside the box here. You know, as a wild card, you went over the two at Carpenter cars. Now I'm trying to think what would be the equivalent, and I guess you know what I'll go there. I'll go with Harlan's dad, Courtney's husband, Graham Rehal, as Leigh Diffey would like to say, and somebody who I've been following for a long time in his career. Used to be a fan of his, but in general, I just whatever. I think Graham Rehal, if he can go out there and have a good run and make back-to-back good runs, he didn't have a great qualifying run, led the warm-up on Sunday. If he can have a good qualifying run, who knows what could really happen for him at St. Pete this weekend. They're running a whole lot of throwback schemes to Bob Rahal this year because it's a 30-year anniversary of the Rahal team since when it was established and ran back in 91. So it'll a lot of cool schemes, mostly based on the Miller Light schemes over his time. But hopefully we'll see some other ones kind of harkening back to the Miller genuine draft days, like Graham did at Road America a couple of years ago. All right, and then we go from a race and how competitive it is and how tough it is to pick certain drivers to Talladega, where you could probably just pull a name out of a hat, and generally speaking, you might have a chance. We'll start with Xfinity, and I think there's two ways. We'll go with a winner. And if it is a Dash for Cash person, then it's taken care of. But if it isn't a Dash for Cash person, who would it be? And then who would be the Dash for Cash winner? And then somebody else that right now in their current situation, probably people wouldn't think about, but because it is Talladega, they have a chance to go out there and get a victory there, Josh.
Well, I think the Dash for Cash winner, I mean, if it's going to be a winner, I mean, I guess it has to be somebody like Noah Gragson. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about him so far this year negatively, but I think if it's going to be a Dash for Cash guy, it's got to be him. I mean, he's won at restrictor plate races before at Daytona in 2020, and he at least in the running for the Dash for Cash. I mean, he won the previous one at Martinsville. So, I mean, you know, if he can win two in a row, I guess for Dash for Cash, I think it's definitely a good opportunity for him to do that. But I mean, I have no idea how Xfinity will go. It's a little bit less predictable or a little bit more predictable than the Cup races. I mean, it's a different package that they run there, a little bit different style of racing that we see compared to the Cup Series. But I mean, if it's not a Dash for Cash guy, I mean, I'm going to go with Austin Cindric. He's already won at Daytona at the beginning of the year, and they've definitely shown the pace at the restrictor plate tracks the last couple of seasons. So Austin Cindric gets another win in 2021. Or he's able to get his third win here in 2021. So I think for him, another restrictor plate win, and then I think maybe a wild card in this race. I mean, it's tough, but I think I'll go with Ryan Sieg as a wild card. I mean, he's definitely shown a lot of speed here at the restrictor plate races at Daytona and Talladega, and they've always been kind of the underdog guy in the Xfinity series the last 5 or 6 years, and they've kind of been up on the up and up, I guess. And I think I see them potentially getting another top 10 run here at Talladega, like they've been accustomed to in the past. So that's what I think for the Xfinity Series.
Yeah, for me, in regards to Xfinity, for a winner, I'm gonna go with AJ Allmendinger because of the quality cars and how fast they are in general, especially at these restrictor play races. Allmendinger will start 11 in the race. Um, you have Justin Haley, who's won in all three series at Daytona. And so he's going to be a factor. He's going to be running a double dip this weekend, driving the 77 car as well for the fraternal of Eagles. In regards to trying to think in terms of, and Jeffrey Earnhardt's driving a Team USA throwback paint scheme from his grandfather. That's cool, I guess. Trying to see here. Because what is it? Race results. Yeah, Barry, Gregson, Hemrick, and Gibbs. So Barry, Gregson, Hemrick, and Gibbs. So Ty Gibbs isn't in this race, and you have Gregson, Hemrick, and Barry. I think Barry is the one that wins the Dash for Cash just because he's Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s boy. And if there's a track that is an Earnhardt track of many or ones that would be considered an Earnhardt track, it'd be Talladega. In regards to a wild card, I'll pick Jeremy Clements because he's somebody who has made something out of nothing for a very long time. They have good cars. Mark Setzer, his crew chief, has shown up and really made a major improvement to the team on a weekly basis. So those are my picks. For Cup, I will start. And in regards to a winner, I'll just go chalk. I'll go Ryan Blaney, who's become kind of a super speedway specialist himself, with another, stellar performance. Go and get another win. Other than that, a dark horse pick in regards to this weekend's race at Talladega. Trying to go and look this up here. Dark horse pick, I would say, is Daniel Suarez. I'll take Daniel Suarez because they've been running well last few weeks. It's an RCR affiliated car. He has his speed and energy and the mental strength to go and get up there and run up front. So those are my picks. How about you, Josh, in regards to this weekend's race at Talladega?
Well, we talked about him earlier about why he hasn't won yet, and I'm going to pick Chase Elliott to win this weekend at Talladega, get his second career Talladega win. He's definitely been really good on the restrictor plate or on the super speedway tracks in the past, and I think this weekend he gets his first win of the season and adds his name to the list of winners this year, list of people who drive for Rick Hendrick that have won this year. So I think he'll be up front there at the end and win. And I think for a wild card, I'll go with Corey LaJoie. They finished ninth back at the Daytona 500. And they're the type of team that could get a top 10 run at a super speedway race. And I think they've definitely got the speed that they can keep up throughout the race. They may not be up front the entire race, but I think at the end, when it all settles it out, they'll get a top 10 run again here at Talladega, just like they did at the beginning of the year at Daytona. So Chase Elliott and Corey LaJoie.
Yeah, that'll be something. Corey LaJoy stacking pennies, running another maggot machine. See how well that works out for him. And then, of course, Clyde, who has run well at Talladega over the years. It's a family lineage thing, probably as well, which might explain that. And we'll see if he can join all his teammates in the playoffs to defend his championship. With that, Josh, let us know what you're doing on the sim side last week and what you're looking to do as we go into this upcoming weekend.
Well, I mean, last weekend, I mean, I just ended up doing just, iRacing Super Speedway with the IndyCar. I mean, we talked about it on the last podcast, and then it's kind of what I ended up doing for, I guess, that week. I ended up there was one race where I ended up finishing seventh, and I thought I would be able to get a good run there at the end, and it looked like it was being close on fuel, and I thought I would be the first car in line after the leaders to be at the finish, but I guess the guys up front figured out how to save fuel, and then ended up finishing in seventh. But didn't crash or anything like that. Didn't get any incident points for my racing, so just a solid result there. I mean, it was a little bit exciting, I guess, at the end. Tried to make a run to get fourth, I guess it was, and ended up getting a big draft, and then going onto the apron to try to make a move, but it just wasn't quite close enough, and ended up finishing in seventh instead of fourth. But it was a pretty exciting race and interesting strategy there, trying to figure out when to pit and stretch the fuel there. But I think this week, not really gonna do anything. Haven't really had much time. Sometimes that's how it goes. And then gonna be out this weekend, obviously, in St. Petersburg for the race. So probably won't really have any time to do any iRacing. But uh, I mean, if I do, maybe I'll do one tomorrow night if I have time. Not sure what I'll run. Maybe Sebring or something like that in IndyCar. I think that's where IndyCar is running this week for iRacing, maybe something like that, or do a quick Talladega one, since Cup and all the NASCAR series is going to be at Talladega. Maybe do something like that. We'll see. Um, but I mean, I think I will talk about briefly the iRacing Pro Invitational that we saw just earlier today, being recorded on Wednesday.
Yeah,
Um,
good call.
yeah, and I think it was an interesting race. There wasn't really a lot of action, I guess. I mean, there was a lot of crashing, obviously, but not really a whole lot of passing. And I think the reason why that was is because recently, iRacing changed the rules package for the Cup cars in their latest update for the super speedways, and so the draft model works a little bit differently for the Cup cars, and they're trying to model it more realistically to what we see at the Cup races on Sundays at Talladega and Daytona, and it really takes a lot of coordination between the front car and whoever's behind them to uh, penetrate that bubble of air, I guess, that we see at these tracks between cars, and you really have to do a whole lot of coordination and timing to be able to make runs throughout the field. And it's not just suck up behind the car and bump draft him up to the lead, like it was in previous versions of iRacing. So I think that's probably the factor in why maybe we didn't really see a whole lot happen up front with the lead changes in this Pro Invitational race at iRacing. So um, I think the racing part of it, I mean, they're trying to model it more to be like in real life, which is fine. That's what it's supposed to be. It's a simulation. But then I think also you have to talk about like guys like Keelan Harvick, who somehow got invited to be in this race, and which I mean, it's fun. Have fun as a kid. Be able to race against your dad on a video game, and basically his coworkers, his peers in a video game. So I guess that's cool. But then also it's kind of weird how Keelan Harvick gets to race in iRacing, but then they can't figure out a deal for somebody like Timmy Hill. I think he did end up racing, but still, the priorities, I guess, for how they're trying to figure out who gets to race in the iRacing Pro Invitational. And
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
Jesse Iwuji gets in and he can't even finish
yeah,
30th in a Xfinity race, but then they were gonna go and not let Timmy Hill run a few
yeah,
weeks ago. So
yeah. It's definitely. I mean, I'm not going to accuse anything or anybody of like making it fishy or whatever, but it definitely felt fishy, I guess, with uh from what I understand, from what I've seen online with how Jesse Iwuji got in the field, I guess. I mean, it's a good opportunity for him, I guess, and for the Navy midshipmen to get exposure like that and show somebody like that being able to race on iRacing. But yeah, at the same time, the level of credibility in the field, ranging from people like Dale Earnhardt Jr., who's made their name on super speedways, to the cup drivers of today who race, and then you got a kid, and then somebody who's barely finished in any race in NASCAR, and not really shown any level of talent really, and it's been kind of slow, I guess, when he's been out there. But I mean, that's how it is. And I mean, your guy Brad Keselowski ended up winning in it, so I mean, at least he's won something this year. I mean, if that ends up being his only win, I mean, guess it's all right to win in a video game, but it was I guess a good showing for iRacing again, and they're able to continue to get exposure and build upon themselves. I mean, I will say, I mean, it's the last thing I'll say about this, but compared to how IndyCar does their iRacing invitational races and some of the other series like IMSA, how they do their invitationals, and then how NASCAR is able to partner with Fox Sports and broadcast it on television, I think they understand how to do it, at least. And then with IndyCar, I think it was free on YouTube to watch. And then I think the IMSA one was on Peacock or on NBCSN. So I think the numbers are going to be a lot different. And I think, some of these other series, they got to figure out a better way to, at least get them on television, or at least get some level of exposure compared to NASCAR and Fox, who seemed to figure it out at the beginning of the pandemic last year, how to broadcast these races and get the numbers and everything. And I think some of these series could probably learn from how Fox does, at least for the sim races, not speaking for the real races in real life, but just how they are able to get the sim races and the numbers and stuff. I think some of these other series could probably learn for that.
Yeah, it's something that, when you talk about broadcasts and how we get presentations, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, I think we're going to get a good idea of the broadcast and presentation when they do SRX here in the summer with Alan Bestwick as the lead announcer, and then a revolving door of analysts of sorts, Brad Doherty, and then you'll have some drivers, you'll have Dario Franchitti and James Hinchcliffe, and then Miss Hummer. Then you'll have Matt Yoakum in the pits. You'll have Lindsay Zarniak hosting the pre-race and all that. So it's kind of got an NBC TNT feel, circa 2001 or whatever right now, or early 2000s there. So that'll be something to see. What are you going to do in regards to the way that certain people want to work? We'll figure it out and see the racing, and hopefully all the racing is safe and all the action is worthwhile, and nobody's using their car as a weapon for sure. Time where people have a itchy hand, to say the least. And with that, we will call an end to this week's GSP episode 57. Episode 58 will have a huge emphasis on the NFL draft, where Josh's Jacksonville Jaguars will draft Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall. But what will they do outside of that to make sure Trevor Lawrence doesn't die? What will the 49ers do at number 3? And will that end up leaving Phil not functioning anymore? Or will he become a Bills fan? Or will he still be a fan? And what he'll think about what that option, whether it is Trey Lance or Justin Fields, would mean in the overall scheme of the future, franchise-wise. And anything else that comes up in regards to some of the teams that need quarterbacks and other positions of great value. Josh, where can we follow you on social media and for your streams?
Yeah, as always, follow me on Twitter at JP Huffine. That's where have the NASCAR takes, IndyCar takes, and then also the NFL takes, and the emotion, the excitement of finally having a franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, and buying him toasters for his wedding registry, and then donating the rest of it to charity. That was a pretty cool thing on Twitter. But also for the streams, you can follow me there at twitch.tv/usailor2 and watch me do iRacing and whatever else video games that I want to try on there. It's mostly just been iRacing, but I'll try to figure it out for the rest. And maybe we'll get a win here soon or something like that, or you'll get a interesting reaction from me. I try to keep it chill, but sometimes it happens. So that's where you can follow and watch my stuff.
And before I go into myself, thanks as always, man, for being here and going and setting up the show in a lot of ways with the outlines and the things you do, and being a great friend and sidekick as we continue on this process and on this journey here on the GSP. You can follow me on Twitter at Philip G. Matthew. You could follow the show at Gripstrip Pod. We're on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Pandora, basically anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find the Gripstrip Podcast. So give us a like and a listen. 5-star reviews are always great. You can get more people. We have reach around the world because of the content that we have, and we'll continue to have that content. We'll go and talk about the NFL draft next week in more detail, along with the events at Richmond or Talladega, Richmond, Talladega, and then St. Petersburg, and wherever there you'll be in Formula E. There'll be other stuff going on. We'll get all that taken care of and ready for you here next week on the GSP. So with that, take care, stay safe, wear a mask, go and take care of one another. Get your vaccine when you can get a chance. It's not that bad. And frankly, it's puts us back close to where we want to be versus where we are right now. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Thank you so much for listening to the GSP, and good night.